Hello, folks. Fancy seeing you here. It's been ages. Thanks ever so much, everyone, for joining me, and particularly those of you who are up really early. Dorothy, I mean, thank you so much for getting up so early. Hello, Bill and Helene. Also, I know you're getting up ridiculously early to come and watch all this. Well, I hope you find this useful. Jane, no, you mustn't forget to join your work call at 3. Please don't blame blame me if you do. I've got just a bit of advice, folks, just before we get started. I'm still not going to start for another 3 or 4 minutes or so, just to allow people to arrive. I would suggest that you don't try and copy along with me as we go this afternoon. Remember, all of this is saved for you, and I think if you're trying to click along and do what I'm doing live, I think you might encounter, all it would take would be one issue, one little bit for you to get stuck, and you'd fall behind and you'd find it frustrating. So can I suggest, those of you that were thinking about following along, maybe just watch the video and see what you can glean from it. Of course, as with all of these techniques, there is a substantial amount of material on YouTube, where we are right now, which will teach you how to use this in depth. I consider today a bit of an introduction, a toe in the water, if you like, to show you what kind of things possible, and to give you some of the kind of key essential tips and tricks that I'd always give a set of students who are setting out with something like this, whether it was Musescore or Sibelius or Noteworthy Composer or any of those similar scoring programs. Hello, Christine. Great to see you. Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello to Judith and Patrick. Glennis is writing it all down as usual. If you want to take notes, folks, please feel free to take notes. But it is all very, very carefully and rather, I think, thoughtfully documented in various websites, and I'll show you where you can find all that information. Great stuff. Hello, Morrigan Fiona. Lovely to see you. I hope all's very well. I do hope you folks enjoyed the Purcell. Is it stuck? It's absolutely and thoroughly stuck in my head. But then again, I've been living it for days. And of course, I completely forgot to acknowledge the wonderful support of Anna, who provided that beautiful soprano part. Beautifully sung, honey. Thank you very much indeed. And she's here with a cuppa, so I'm gonna have my cuppa too, and we'll start in a minute or two. Fabulous stuff. Oh, that's great, Maura. Thank you. I think it would just be better to just sit back, let me do all the talking and the wittering, and then you can watch along. All right. And yet, Gareth Malone has written a new version of Locus Iste, has he? Okay. It's nice of him to turn up and do something for a change. I think he did the Great British Home Chorus for about a month, and it's been quiet since then. Yeah, sorry everybody for the earworm. Hello to Carla, good afternoon. Hello, Jenny. Oh, bless you. No, honestly, those of you who are thinking, oh, this might not be my thing, please don't worry if you get to the end of think, no, this isn't for me. But there is such a lot that everyone can get from this. I think it's worth at least knowing that this kind of thing is possible, and that it's free, and that if you ever wanted to use it, well, you can. All right, I think that's the best way to think about this. And for those of you who are keen hobbyist musicians, always wanted to write something down, well, this may well be the day. This could be the day. Who knows? Well, look, folks, we're going to get started. So thank you ever so much for being here. This is only going to be a half-hour session. There is so much that I could say about Musescore and Sibelius and other programs like this. If there's a lot of demand, I can certainly look at doing a series of these. But today is really just, as I say, a drop in the ocean, a toe in the water, if you like, to help us along our way on our composing series. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to change screen, and it's going to look rather unusual in a minute. But first of all, I think we'll just go full screen just while I welcome everybody. So hello, everyone. A very, very good afternoon. Welcome to the deep dive. And we're in the middle of a series on composing. We've had a look already at just pulling random Scrabble tiles out of a bag and creating a piece. Last week we were looking at GarageBand, to pronounce it properly, and sequences and ways that you can use loops to create little pieces. This week, we really are diving deep, folks. We're having a look at a score editor. And so what I'm going to do now, folks, is I'm going to change the design of this layout here, and I'm going to disappear down into a box in the corner, and we're going to be in our scoring window for today. So welcome to the learning zone, if you like. Now, before anybody panics, please don't worry. At the very top of the screen, just above me, you'll just see the logo for today's session. And then above me directly, you will see just a list of essential commands, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but I'm keeping those on screen because they are absolutely essential for any of these scoring programs. And if you've ever used a word processor, if you've ever used a spreadsheet, database, you'll recognize a lot of these commands because they're universal across an operating system, across an OS. Now, what you'll see on screen here is you see musescore.org. Okay, now I want to make one thing very, very clear before we start. Musescore is, I hate to use the word, but it's an ecosystem. It's a piece of software and an associated community. And there are two websites. To get the software, you need to go to musescore.org, which is the website you'll see on screen here. And the software is free. Okay, to download and install the software for PC or for Mac or for Linux or for any of the computers, it is free. Now there is a charge, I believe, for the tablet, for the iPad and Android app version, but to download and install it, it is free. Okay, you need to have a computer that can cope with it, that has a relatively modern operating system. So if your computer is really, really old, it may not work, but it's worth a try, isn't it? So it'll download, it'll be moderately large, about 1 gigabyte I think, and it should install relatively quickly. Now the other website that you'll find, folks, is musescore.com. okay, and this is where the people who use the Musescore software to create music, this is where they publish and share those scores. Now you can visit this site for free, you can have a look. So this is literally just the top of the page. Here's some Schumann rather, Liebesbotschaft, nice piece. And you can see here it's got various controls, and if I press play on here, you should be able to hear it. Okay, so we can listen along to that. We can do things like speed the tempo up, so we can have a bit faster. And this is all built into your web browser. So if you're watching on a phone, if you're watching on a computer, this should display relatively well. You can even have a look at the layout here as notes, and you can play along. And this is all built in to the web browser. So this is free to access. If you wanted to then download this score and open it in Musescore and edit it yourself, you have to have an account, and this is where they're going to ask for a bit of money. Now, if this is the kind of thing you've never experienced it before, please don't even consider subscribing. But if you use this kind of software and this is of interest to you, I mean, the community is huge, and the styles of music out there are absolutely enormous and varied. So I'm subscribed to this, and it's been very, very useful this year just in terms of preparing scores. All right. But the most important thing you're going to need for our session is musescore.org, so you can get your software. All right, folks. So that's the first thing. Make sure you've gone to the right website. The thing we're talking about today, you don't need to pay for. So install your software first of all. All right. Now let's have a look at what happens when you open Musescore. All right. And in fact, that's not quite what you get when you open it. You get something like this. You get the Start Center, and it'll show you some stuff down the side. This is just adverts. Ignore that. The thing we want is to create a new score. So we click that, and it'll open up a wizard. And again, if you've used Microsoft Word, if you've used any of these traditional applications, you've encountered a wizard before. It just says, fill in the bits here, and we'll populate the score for you. So let's give it a title. We'll just call it Song. Subtitle, well, it doesn't have a subtitle at the moment. Composer, me. Lyricist, me. Copyright, I don't think it's going to be worth copywriting at the moment. Then it says, what do you want to establish a template? Do you want to put in, for example, a 4-part choir? And as you click it, it gives you a little preview of the kind of layout of the score. Do you want to put in a saxophone quartet? Do you want to create a full symphony orchestra score? And it'll give you a blank score, but with all of the instruments created and ready to fill in. I don't think we need to go quite so grand on today's session, folks. So what I think I'll do is I think we'll just put in a voice and piano. So we select that. It shows us the preview. I say continue. It gives me the option of choosing a key signature. I like the key of F major, so I'm going to click on F, but most of you will just want to keep it nice and plain for now and C. So I'm going to put it in F major. Time signature, you can just ignore all this and just click done. It'll open the score and you can start adding it, but I always like to fill in as much as I can if I know what it is that I'm creating. So I'm going to have a 4/4 time signature, and otherwise tempo, fine, done. Now what it's done there, folks, is it's created document for me, and we can see it looks like a score. We've got a title at the top, we've got the composer and the lyricist, and this is the way a score is laid out. Composed by here. The lyricist, sorry, excuse me, is on the other side, and then we've got our voice, and we've got our piano, we've got our time signature, we've got our key. Everything is in order, if you like. Now, let's have a look at how we now get some stuff into this. We've got our framework. How do we get some sounds input, and how do we get them playing? Well, let's just have a little look and orient ourselves as we go. So along the top here, we've got these buttons here, and just as with last week, just with GarageBand, as you hold your mouse, and you don't click, but you hold over it, it'll give you a little preview, little yellow boxes pop up. You probably can't make that out on my screen, but it just tells you what each of these buttons does, and it's create new score, load score, save score, print, undo, redo. You've got different views here. We'll look at that in a minute, but continuous view is very, very nice. That shows you the score as just one long bar, one long series of bars rather than pages. It's probably easier today to look at it in page view. So as I say, you just go along, get an idea of what it all does. This toolbar here, I don't know if you can see the mouse, I think you can, where we've got all these different notes. This is where things are going to start to get interesting in just a moment, everyone. And in fact, I think what I should do is just to grab some notes and start putting them in. Now, if you recall, 2 weeks ago we were looking at we used a poem by Spike Milligan, I eat my peas with honey, I've done so all my life, it makes the peas taste funny but it keeps them on the knife. And I feel moved to continue using those words. They are, after all, absolutely wonderful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a note, and I don't know if you saw that, so I'll come off that, and just looking above me, you see on the essential buttons here, escape. So the escape key will reset your mouse pointer. So if I click on this, it's sort of highlighted stuff, and if I want to undo that, I just click escape, and it's as if that never happened. All right. So I'm going to click on a note, and I'm going to put it in the score. There we are. And I'm going to move the mouse along. I'm going to click again. So I've got 4 notes. I'm going to click this button, which is the take it back to the beginning. I press play, and we get beautiful. Oh, goodness me. Bach, eat your heart out. So there we have 4 notes. Now, putting notes in is as simple, if you want to, as just clicking and putting them in one at a time. Yeah, in whichever order you like. Now, that's a little bit laborious, and you have to know what you're doing in terms of the note values. So if I want that note to be that length, I'm going to think, okay, now I need to think about a 1-beat note to put in here, and so on. There are other ways of doing it, which we'll look at in just a minute. But now let me show you what you can do to speed things up significantly. Okay, we've got something which doesn't sound very good, I'm certain of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get rid of that. I'm going to give it a little bit of thought, just a little bit, folks. All right, it never hurts to put in a bit of thought. So I eat my peas with honey. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with what's called an anacrusis. An anacrusis is an upbeat. So that means I need 3 rests at the start. Okay, so I've just clicked on the rest. This is a 4-beat rest. As I click here on the 2-beat note, it turns it into 2 half-bar rests. If I now click with that one selected, if I now click on the 1-beat note, it turns it into a 1-beat rest, which is all quite useful. Now, I'm going to click a note. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to click. So we were using, our first note, I think, was D. I eat my peas with honey. I've done so all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Okay, something like that. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that, well, you will have noticed that all of the notes at the moment are all 1 beat long. Okay, even the longer notes. Okay, I eat my peas with honey, I was clicking extra 1-beat notes, and I'll explain why in a minute. Let's just listen to it though from the beginning. This is our tune. Here we go. All my life life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Great. Okay, so that is a tune. Now, why did I click those one beat notes? Why did I fill that bar with one beat notes? Well, that was a technique that I used to use with working with young composers. When you're using stuff like this, when you're coming up with a tune, particularly at this point, it's much better to lay out your overall structure. It's like doing a rough sketch, and don't worry too much about the note values and underpinning it all. Just give us a general shape of the tune, da 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 da. And if that means you've got to click more than one note in the bar to fill it in, that's fine, because what we're going to do now is to go back over, and some of the notes we're going to make longer and some of them we're going to make shorter. Think of it a little bit more like working with clay than with a pen, okay? Because all of this is infinitely malleable and adjustable. Let me show you how. So if we click on this first note, if I decided actually I don't want that first note to be a D, I'd quite like that to be an A. So now I'm going to use the arrow keys, okay, the arrow keys on the keyboard, and that again is on your essentials list above, and that's the ones that just left, right, up and down. I'm going to use up and down, and notice what's happening to my note. It's rising by semitone. If I now click down, descending by semitone. If I click right on the arrow key, it moves to the next note, and left, it goes back to the preceding note. So that's really useful. Once you put a note in, well, you can just move it around any way you like. Okay, so actually I quite like the idea of starting on an A. I eat my peas with honey. Now there, I want that note in that bar, I want it to be longer. I eat my peas with honey. I want that to be a 2-beat note. At the moment, it's 2 1-beat notes. So watch what happens if I now go up here and I click on the 2-beat note. It's turned those 2 notes into 1 beat. It's combined the 2 into 1. And suddenly that now looks a bit better. I've done so all my life. Now I want that to be 3 beats. So let's click on the first note there. I'm going to turn it into a 2-beat note. Now actually, do I want it to be 3 or do I want my singers to have a breath? Let's take a breath. So I'm going to click to the note that I'm going to turn into a rest. And up here I click on the rest icon and it's done. It makes the peas taste funny. I'm going to do the same thing again as I did here. Or even, how about this for a wheeze? I'm going to click on the bar because it's the same rhythm, same notes. I'm going to use this command above us on this fantastic list I've given you here. Command C, or if you're on a PC, Control C to copy the whole bar. Now I click on this bar, Command V, it's pasted the bar in place for me, exactly the same, so I don't need to do it again. Okay, now here at the end, because I've got, I eat my peas with honey, I've done so all my life, breath, it makes the peas taste funny, but now I want 2 syllables in 1 beat. And we're not Thomas Tallis here, we're not going to sing Spreet, you know, like If You Love Me. I need 2 notes there. Now, so I need to fit 2 notes into 1 beat. That means I need 2 half-beat notes. If I move up here, we can see we've got them here. Quarter notes, 1/8 notes as quavers, as we say over here, 1/8 notes as they say in the States. So if I click on one of them, it's given me a single one. Well, why don't I copy that note? Command C. Oh, went the wrong way. Command C, Command V, there it is. Okay? Honey, but it keeps them on the knife. And I'll just make that last note a little bit longer. So let's listen to our tune. This is the first time anyone's heard it. Here's our song. 1, 2, 3. Eat my peas with honey. I've done so all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. All right, there we go. So now, if I wanted to just copy and paste that, and is it Leslie there? Yes, Leslie said, can you highlight to copy? So I've said above, if you click on the first bar, okay, just click on it. Then if you hold down Shift and click on the last bar of the phrase, you've highlighted the whole phrase. You can copy it, and then you can paste it again as many times as you like in whichever parts you like. All right, so I'll paste it again, and so on. All right. So yes, you absolutely can. That was a really good question. Thank you. Now, are we finished? Absolutely not. That's a tune. That's nothing else. That's just a melody. So what we need to do is to put something underneath that might sound a bit satisfying. Okay. So what we've got here is we've got something that starts in probably D minor. Now I'm just going to put in chord 1, chord 5 and chord 4. And if you're experienced deep divers, you'll remember this business about chords. And so all I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to use this this note value here, this 4-beat note. So I'm just going to build underneath chord 1. Okay, D minor, so that's D, F, A. Remember, play 1, miss 1, play 1, miss 1, play 1. D, F, A gives us D minor. And I want the same again in this bar here. So I'm going to copy. Now I'm going to do the same thing in this bar, but I want this to be a different chord. I want this to be chord 5. If you remember, it's all about chord 1 and chord 5 when you're harmonizing, or mostly. And so, given this is chord 1, if I want this to be chord 5, I either need to take it up 5 pitches or down 4 pitches. So I'm going to take it down to A there. Now I need to turn that into a C sharp. So in order to do that, I'm just going to use my up arrow. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to copy and just paste these chords in. And the nice thing about this is, yes, I do know which chords fit nicely with this tune, but even if I didn't, I could just try it out. Put a chord in. If it sounds good, leave it there. If it doesn't, move the notes around, move it up, move it down. See what works for you. And this is what I would always say to composers trying things out. Yes, there are rules that you can learn. Absolutely, there are rules. There are always rules. But actually, there have been more than a few composers who have gone into the world with no formal musical education and have come up with a musical style that has completely blown everyone away. Berlioz was an example of that. No formal musical education, was largely ignored and derided by his colleagues. Mendelssohn said whenever he handled a Berlioz score, he felt he had to wash his hands afterwards. It was, nasty. And yet Berlioz's music is adored and loved today. Imagine the world without the Symphonie Fantastique. Another example is the composer Giorgio Moroder, great composer of synthesizer music. No formal training, amazing musician. So what I'm saying is, folks, is have a play around with these things. See what fits for you. If you like the sound of it, well, maybe then you might have just invented a new type of music. You never know. Okay, so I'm just going to fill these chords in, and these are just block chords here. Okay, and keeps them on the knife. I'm just using chords 1 and 5, and some of it will sound grotty and some of it will sound all right. Let's listen to it. Here we go. And peas with honey, I've done so all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. That kind of works. A couple of them were a little bit clunky. I could have used a slightly more artful chord, but I'm quite happy with that from the point of view of demonstration. Now, are we finished? No, we're not, because that's really boring. We've got a tune and we've got a chord sequence that kind of works, all right, but it's not got any other movement to it, none at all. So what we're going to do, everyone, we're going to add another line. Now, to add another instrument, you'll see from the guide above, you press I on your keyboard and it brings this dialogue up here, and this is how you add other instruments. So you look down the left hand side and you'll see a preview of the instruments that are available, and I'm going to add another piano in here, and you'll see why in just a minute, because I want to create a sort of tinkly sound. In fact, I might just add I'm just going to add the treble clef. So I'm going to click on the bass clef here that's showing me, and I'm going to remove it. Okay, because all I want is a treble line here, and you'll see why in just a moment. So our first chord here is D minor. Okay, D minor, if we recall, is D, F, and A. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here, I'm going to grab these quavers, these eighth notes, and I'm just going to play a little pattern, just using the notes of the chord of D minor. Okay, so there's a technical term for this. This is an arpeggio, or a broken chord, and you can see why it's called a broken chord. It's the notes of D minor, and as I play my keyboard, you can see it's putting them in. In fact, that's another thing. If you have a keyboard that you can connect to the computer, you can play you have to select the note value, but then when you play it in, you get this. And I'll do the next bar. And all I'm doing is playing notes of these chords. Goodness me, that's a really complicated line, but all it is the notes of the chord. If you know the notes of your chord, chord 1, D, F, and A, and chord 5, A, C sharp, and E, well, then you can do that. All I did was break the chord up into its constituent parts and then just play it in a little pattern. All right, now let's have a little listen to that as we listen to it back. So we'll have a chord played on the piano, and we've also got this little tinkly line and our tune at the top. Let's have a listen. I've done so all my life, it makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Okay, now I know it's not Mozart, but it's starting to sound a little bit more, well, together it sounds almost like a piece. Not quite yet. There's still a couple of things we could do. At the moment, we've got a really kind of strange, slightly schizophrenic piano thing going on, where you've got chords and you've got a nice tinkly piano part. So we can take advantage of that. I think what we're missing at the moment, we've got lots going on in the middle of the sound, lots around here, but nothing happening in the extremes, nothing up towards the top of the pitch, and not a lot happening in the bass. So what I'm going to do, ladies and gents, given that I have these chords here, I could do something a little bit sneaky. I'm going to add a couple of instruments, and let's add some woodwinds to this. Let's add a flute, shall we? Which is like a nice flute. And let's add an oboe. I love me some oboe. So I've just clicked on these, I add them to the score. Okay, there they are. Now at the moment they're in a funny order, and actually, again, if you go back to instruments here, you can do things like click on the flute and then click this up arrow here to put it at the top of the score. There we are with the oboe as well. And just to make sure it's in the right order, I might even put that treble clef part above here. So it's, as you can see, that now looks a little bit more like a professional score. We've got the flute at the top, then the oboe, then the voice, and then the piano at the bottom. And in case you're wondering why is it laid out like that, well, you put the higher pitched instruments at the top and the lower pitched instruments at the bottom, and the voice will always go above a piano line. There you are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this this rather nice but simple chordal part here, and just as we discussed, I'm going to click on the first bar, and I'm going to shift click, so hold down shift and click on the last bar of the same line. It selected the whole thing. I'm going to copy by using that lovely command above, and I'm going to paste it entirely into the flute part and the oboe part. Okay, now watch this. I'm going to just click on the lower note of each of these chords, and just using the backspace key, I'm just going to delete the notes I don't want. You see what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to do the opposite for the oboe. I'm going to take the top part off. So we've got, from those piano chords that I just very quickly moused in, we've actually got a little woodwind line. So now let's listen to it. We've got piano, we've got an arpeggio here, what we call an ostinato, repeating line. We've got a melody, and we've got a nice sort of woodwind part that's going to be above the texture. Let's have a little listen. Here we go. I eat my peas with honey, I've done so all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Great, it's really starting to take shape. Is it ready yet? Still needs the small matter of the words. And so here, what we're going to do is going to add some lyrics. Again, you can see from my my little guide above. To do that, you need to click on the note. So this is important. If you just click lyrics, it'll say, well, what do you mean? There's nothing to attach it to. So you have to say whereabouts you're going to start your lyrics. So on my vocal line here, I'm going to click on the first word, which is I, as in I eat my peas with honey. And then I'm going to click on this, it's Command L, and on your computer, if you're on a PC, it might be Control L, whichever you're on. And I don't know if you can quite see this, but a little box has appeared with a little cursor underneath. I'm just going to type I, okay, as in I eat. Now, if I press spacebar, watch what happens. It goes to the next note. I eat, spacebar, my, space, peas, space, with. Now, if you've got a word that has more than one syllable, what you do is you type the first syllable and then a dash, so ha, dash, and then the next syllable, ni. And you notice that then looks perfectly nice. I'll put a little full stop. And it is as simple then as just typing through, I've done so all my life, full stop, space. It automatically leaves out rests because you're not going to have lyrics on a rest. It makes the peas taste fa, and then fun, dash, ni, comma, but it keeps them on the knife. Full stop. There we go. Let's just have a look. Back to the start here. So there are our lyrics. So now we do need to update this. So I'm going to double click at the top here, highlight this. We're going to call it I eat my peas with honey. The lyrics are not by Ben England, much as I wish they were. They are by the great Spike Milligan. We could do with a couple of dynamics before we played all the way through. So this is going to tell the musicians whether they're playing loudly or quietly. So it's as simple as clicking here on the note, and then down the side, we haven't really looked at this, but there's all sorts of things that you can drop in. Just click and drag all of these symbols and so on. So if I now click dynamics, which is here, let's just have it a nice mezzo piano. So I click on the note again, just like with lyrics. I want this note to be mezzo piano. So I click on the note, then I click MP, and there it is. And if it's not in the place I like, well, I can drag it to wherever I want it. So let's do that again with the oboe part. Let's have the voice be a little bit louder. No offense to the woodwind, but let's have the voice nice and audible. And then the piano should be piano, I think, so to speak. All right, a nice piano. And then I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got ourselves a very, very basic little song. Let's sing it through, shall we? There's your starting note. Here's your introduction. Enjoy. I eat my peas with honey. I've done so all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. And then if I wanted to, I can just grab all of that. So I'm just going to click at the bottom of one end and at the top of the other. I'm going to copy it, paste it in, and then you can carry straight on. I could add another vocal part. I could add in some harmony. It really is an immensely capable and adaptable program. Now, folks, I understand that I've moved very quickly and there's been a lot to take in, but do bear in mind, this is the kind of thing that if you've ever been interested in even writing a single note down, well, I think this might be something that you could have a go at. One of the great things about it is that once you've put the note in place, you can press that play button and you can hear back what you've done. And I want to finish today by just saying to anybody who's always just had in the back of my mind, I wonder what it would take in order to be a composer. You know, are composers just born? And the answer is no. They're not. Nobody is just born able to write music. We all have good instincts, but the key to being able to compose in a style that you admire. So let's say I've always wanted to write Baroque music. What I would say to you is, well, then you need to do what the great composers always did, and what musicians do these days, which is to copy out and reproduce the work that you love. So with this, for example, if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to really advance your music reading and your understanding of harmony, you might, for example, download Musescore. You might get a piece of your favorite piece printed. Maybe it could be a movement of Purcell, could be the piece we learned today, or it could be the Hallelujah Chorus, or it could be a hymn that you like. And hymns are really good for learning about harmony. And then you copy it out. So you basically use the mouse and you work out how to create what's on the paper on the screen, and you can use the playback function to check your right as you go through. And you might think, gosh, that sounds laborious, that's going to take ages. And to that I will say, yes, it is, and it will. But it will teach you a huge amount about music and how it works. When I was 16, I had a computer called a Commodore Amiga, and it was the first computer I ever worked with that could actually you could program it to play music and it sounded okay. And I spent 3 weeks, folks, learning how to use this software. It was nowhere near as adaptable and flexible as this. And I got my computer to play the organ part for Jesus Joy of Man's Desiring. And as I say, it took me 3 weeks and it was painstaking and frustrating. But by the end of it, I really understood what I was doing. And this is what the great composers have always done. Bach, he studied the music of Vivaldi. He spent years as a student copying out painstakingly the original scores and making his own copies to learn how it worked. Handel did the same, but with the music of Corelli. All right, so if you want to learn how to compose, my honest advice to you would be to find a piece that you really like, get a piece of software like this and copy it in, or if you prefer, if you're a paper and pencil type of person, order some music manuscript and write it out, because you will learn so much from the experience. And frankly, if it's good enough for Bach and Handel, it's good enough for us. So folks, I hope that's been useful. I hope that's been interesting. If you found it a little bit intense, if it's gone over your head, please don't worry about it. This is just, as I say, a toe in the water. Now next week we're going to look at something completely different. We're going to look at composing using something called aleatoric means, and this is as far from this type of composing as one can get. This is almost completely random composition. And so it'll be a very different experience. It'll be a little bit more, I suppose, meditative, and the type of music that comes out at the end will be completely and utterly, shall we say, unique. But I don't think you're going to want to miss it. It's going to be really, really interesting. So join me for the deep dive next week. As I say, I really do hope that you've enjoyed today. Don't forget to join me on Friday, please, folks, at 2 o'clock for our anniversary special. We've been on the air for almost an entire year, which blows my mind. So thanks very much for coming along today, everyone. If you're in self-isolation choir, I'll see you at 5 o'clock, but otherwise, see you on Friday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.